Okay, well, hey guys, we are starting a new chapter today. Specifically, this chapter talks about carboxylic acids, esters, amines, and amides. So you will notice that we are skipping chapter 13 for now. It talks about carbohydrates, which is more of a biomolecule. So we're going to go back to it after this chapter. So this lecture or this PowerPoint is just for today's lecture over sections 1 and 2 of chapter 14 in your textbook. So the first functional group we're going to be talking about are carboxylic acids. So we've learned these previously, at least what they are. Carboxylic acids contain what's called a carboxylate group. I'm sorry, a carboxyl group. So they have a carboxyl group, but as a whole, they're called a carboxylic acid, similar to like a hydroxyl and a alcohol. So remember, a carboxyl group is a carbonyl next to an alcohol, carbonyl next to a hydroxyl. So it looks like this here. Some characteristics and uses of it. One first characteristic in terms of taste, I don't encourage you to taste carboxylic acids that are not common ones that we have in our food or anything, but some common ones that we have in our food have a very sour taste. Such as vinegar is acetic acid that's dilute. We'll learn what that looks like in just a moment. Actually, it's this molecule I have drawn on the screen with the 2 carbons on it. So that's acetic acid is vinegar and in the really dilute form, and that vinegary taste is the characteristic taste of a carboxylic acid. And then also citric acid, that's it's kind of technically a sugar that is they put on food in order to make like the sour. So like the sour Skittles is coated in citric acid, or Sour Patch Kids coated in citric acid, so it makes that sour taste. In their salt form, so we're going to learn what happens to acids when we deprotonate them or ionize them into their salt form, and those are typically used as preservatives. So I'll show you guys a couple of those molecules in a couple minutes. And our last characteristic is that it's kind of from their name, but these are weak acids. Okay, so the other part of section 1 is talking about naming carboxylic acids. So we are going to get good at doing both the common and the IUPAC names for carboxylic acids. We've kind of been swapping back and forth which one we're using, but for carboxylic acids, you typically do use that common name pretty often, but the IUPAC name is going to be necessary as well, especially if we have more than 4 carbons in our carboxylic acid. So the naming convention, similar to how we've been doing our other functional groups where we change the ending of our base name. So instead of replacing the E at the end of the alkane chain with OL or AL or whatever else we were talking about with those different functional groups, for this functional group, it's going to end with IC or OIC, I'm sorry. OIC and then space acid. So we put on our alkane name just like we normally do, replacing E with oic acid. We number the carbon chain, starting with the carbon of the carbonyl. So in this case, you'll notice the carbon has to be carbon number 1. So we don't have to label it as such. We don't need to say that the carboxylic acid is at number 1 position because it has to be by definition. And then name and number the substituents, list alphabetically like we've been doing this whole time. So I went ahead, I went ahead and listed the IUPAC names on the bottom here. So for example, we had methane was the common name for just CH4 without the carboxylic acid. But we crossed off that E and changed it with OIC acid. Same thing with ethanoic acid, propanoic acid, butanoic acid. And then the base name for when we're naming an aromatic ring with a carboxylic acid on it is going to be benzoic acid. So we'll do the same thing where you number, starting with number 1 where that carboxylic acid is, and then label all of your substituents and then put benzoic acid at the end. Continuing on to the common names of these carboxylic acids, it's kind of the same start that we've been seeing with a lot of the other, like the aldehydes, for example. But now they're going to end with OIC acid as well. So there's 5 particular ones that we're going to learn. This first one, methanoic acid, is synonymous with formic acid. Well, I guess it's not always OIC for the common names. We'll get rid of that. Formic acid, you'll notice, is the main component in an ant sting. So if you get bitten by ants, what makes your skin all red and not happy is the formic acid in there. I guess it's venom, poison, venom. I don't remember which one's which. That's okay. And then we have ethanoic acid. The common name for this is acetic acid. So this is, as I said on last slide, is vinegar. So acetic acid is most commonly known as vinegar. Propanoic acid, I don't have a fun thing for it, but its other name is propionic acid. This next one is kind of fun because it is, so butanoic acid can also be called butyric acid. It's the smell, one of the smells that is associated with vomit. Why? I don't really know why. Maybe I could look it up if any of you are interested. But it's actually a fun little story. We'll do a little bit of outreach labs to the pre-COVID era. We'll do a little bit of outreach labs for little kids or like even middle schoolers. We'll go around and talk about how different functional groups on molecules have different smells. And that's how we'll kind of introduce organic chemistry. And so we don't prep them or anything, and we give them both acetic acid, really dilute, so it's the vinegar smell, so it's really bad. But then we'll also give them really, really dilute butyric acid because it just smells awful. And it's always really fun watching the little kids smell it and then want to vomit themselves. I don't know, that kind of sounds bad of me, but it's really fun. We have the rest of the smells, those are the only 2 bad ones. We typically have about 15 of them and only 2 of them are bad. The rest of them are really good smelling. And we make sure that they only smell these from far away so they're not getting a big whiff of them. That was a tangent, but our last one is benzoic acid again. The common name is also benzoic acid. Okay. So these are the common names and the IUPAC names. So we've worked a lot with IUPAC names. The common names are going to be exactly the same, where you're going to take that base common name and add any substituents or whatever you have as prefixes at the beginning. And we'll practice that in the next video. So in our next video, we'll practice naming of carboxylic acids, and then we'll keep going from there. See you guys.